Thank you for the questionnaires. Thank you for the detailed questions. I'm going to dive right in, and my first question is for you, Ken Keechl. Ken, of the 4 candidates in this race, you're the only candidate who said that the firing of John Herbst was justified as city auditor. Why do you feel that way?
First of all, Chris Williams just raised his hand. I think he's trying to get in. So, look, it's not easy to say that, but it needs to be said. The city auditor is on the campaign trail telling everybody that he had a say in everything, but not acknowledging, for example, the fact that he was in favor of rating the water and wastewater money to balance the budget. And so, to me, what's important is the understanding, and I know the editorial board probably disagrees with me on this based upon your previous reporting, that the buck stops with the commissioners. And I was a mayor of Broward County. I was assistant city attorney for a number of years in Plantation. And a city auditor and a city manager and a city clerk and a city attorney, they have a unique position. They need to be in sync with the elected officials. My bigger concern, Steve, is how Mr. Herbst has acted subsequent to the termination. I know he's very angry, but we had a meeting yesterday, Fort Lauderdale Forum, and I brought up the fact that he had hired an attorney to write a letter threatening to sue the city commission if they didn't rescind the vote and pay him through February 4, 2023. And at the end of his letter, his attorney said, as you know, Commissioner Moritas has announced her resignation. Mr. Herbst intends to run for the seat if he's a private citizen and is no longer employed by the city.
Okay.
If he is employed even on lead, he'd be precluded from running. As a trial lawyer, it doesn't take too much to understand that's extortion. And so I believe the commissioners get the benefit of the doubt. And if Mr. Herbst gets elected, he's one of them. I think they get the benefit of the doubt with regard to the city auditor, city manager. But I don't know how he's going to function if the people elect him, because he is at war with the mayor and Commissioner Glass.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Ken. There's a lot there. I'm certainly going to give John Herbst a full opportunity to respond. I heard, John, extortion. The word Ken Keechl uses in his questionnaire is revenge. You're motivated by revenge for running. So how do you respond to what Keechl has just said?
So thank you again. I appreciate the opportunity to respond to that. So let me throw a couple of points out there. So first of all, I'll point out that Ken never answered the question about why it was appropriate to fire me in the first place. Let's point out that I was conducting a fraud investigation, and the city commission improperly terminated me as a result of conducting that fraud investigation. They violated the Whistleblower Act. I wrote a letter to the city commission advising them that they had violated the Whistleblower Act. And Ken, as a matter of fact, and I've got a copy of it, even praised my attorney for such a great letter that was written and wanted to represent me in case I filed a lawsuit against the city. So thank you, Ken, for recognizing what a great job we did in pushing back on the commission.
And thank you for recognizing that you wrote the letter today.
Leaving that aside, yes, we did write a letter. We wrote a letter that stated that the commission had broken the law, attempting to shut down an investigation. They tried to stop a fraud investigation, and they fired me for doing that. And that's a violation of state law, which you as an attorney. So I made an offer to the city commission requesting reinstatement, wanted to rescind their improper termination. And in exchange for that, I offered a release from all claims related to their improper termination. I'm not suing them for factually incorrect yesterday that I'm suing them for millions. Ever done that? I'm not doing that. The city commission then rejected that offer. Since that time, I have not filed a lawsuit contrary to any claims you have made. I decided that I am more concerned with running for office because I think I could have more of an impact for the community, continuing the public service that I've had for the last 16 years with the city by moving forward as a commissioner. Am I going to agree with every commissioner up there? Unlike you, I don't think this is a popularity contest. I don't think it has to be a love fest. I'm going to represent my district And if that means I've got to push back against the mayor and commissioners, I'll do that. I'm not going to rubber stamp every single thing they want to do because I want to be liked by them. What I want to do is be effective. And when they are in favor of policies that are good for the city, I'm going to vote alongside them. When they are in favor of policies that are detrimental to the city's interests, I'm going to vote against them. And it's not about whether we're friends. It's about ethics, it's about integrity, and it's about professionalism. Thank you.
Okay, John, I've got one quick follow-up for you, John Herbst, and that is Ken Keechl also raised this question, and it's come up before, that you were a supporter of the ROI, the RAID, as it's...
Oh, thank you for bringing that up. Yes.
Just so our viewers know, this is going back a few years. This is under the reign of both Lee Feldman as city manager and Jack Seiler as mayor, correct?
That is absolutely correct. So
okay.
Again, let me correct that misstatement on the record. I was not in favor of the ROI. City manager came to me and he said, "Is this something we can do legally?" And I said, "Well, there's a court case out of Orlando that's established the legal basis for ROI." And I said, "If you're going to do it, we have to have a reasonable, rational basis for the methodology by which we determine what the appropriate rate is going to be. You can't be arbitrary and capricious and pick a number out of thin air." So I looked at the Public Service Commission's methodology for how they determine what an appropriate return on investment is when they allow various utilities to determine rates around the state. And I said, if you're going to do it, this is how it should be done. I don't make policy. Okay, I'm not there to recommend whether we should tax or whether we should use fees or whether we should use ROI. And reminder, there was a pilot, payment in lieu of taxes, is very similar to the ROI that was in place for decades, and it's used in almost every city around the country. So this is nothing new. But to insinuate that as a staff person, I somehow have the authority to implement or advocate for this is factually wrong. Ken was an elected official. He knows better. He knows that only elected officials set rates and vote on policy, not staff.
Okay, John. All right. Thank you very much. Let me bring Christina and Chris Williams into this conversation. You're hearing the dialogue. I'll start with you, Christina. What do you have to add? What is your perspective on this subject we're discussing?
Like everyone except for Ken, I disagree with the commission firing Mr. Herbst. They truly felt that he was not performing his job satisfactorily, then they should have gone through the appropriate avenues. Calling a vote at 11:30 at night after two commissioners have already left is not professional, and it's not going through the appropriate. I don't want to. Basically, it's an HR thing. It's also a matter of respect. Like, the way they did it was incredibly rude, which unfortunately has become more common on the dais.
Tell us a little bit more about, and you participate and you go to a lot of these meetings, or you watch them online. Tell us about the demeanor, the decorum of this city commission.
It's very much we're the parents, we're going to do what we want. You're the kids, you don't like it? Oh, well, we're going to do what we want. People spoke or tried to speak out for hours against Bahia Mar and the one-stop shop. And basically, the commissioners were indifferent to them. They were rude to quite a few. And I don't think that's how you get things done. So it's not appropriate. If you want to effectively do things, you should be able to do it with decorum and respect.
Thank you very much. Chris Williams, you've been very patient. Go ahead and address the same points, Chris.
Thanks, Steve. Can you guys hear me okay now that I'm on video?
Yes, we see you too. Great. Yep.
Perfect. Okay, great. So regarding ROI, that's something that when I first got on the Budget Advisory Board 4 years ago, was a pretty hot topic in the city. And in our Budget Advisory Board meetings, I do remember that's my introduction to John and as the auditor, and discussing the state laws, and that we were currently within state laws to do the ROI, but it was a good idea to then end that practice and move forward. So that's what my first involvement with that. Regarding the termination of John Herbst, the information I have, which is kind of minimal, it's based on what was reported in the Sun Sentinel and a little bit of hearsay here and there. I mean, not knowing what was going on behind the scenes, I would not have fired him. That's what I put in my paperwork that you guys had sent to me.
Okay. Very good. I want to, I can't see Susanna Bryan, but I want to just, again, she's reported on a lot of these issues that we're discussing. So if she wants to add any questions to the conversation, that'd be fine with me, Susanna.
Yeah, and I've got dogs barking and I'm typing everything down, so I'm muting myself so I don't disturb you guys. But I'll jump in if I have to.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Okay.
Steve,
All
I
right.
did want to bring up one issue I'm kind of curious about, if you don't mind. At least two of the
Go ahead, yes.
at least two of the four candidates brought up the issue of petty crime and homelessness and panhandling in the city, particularly since the homeless were cleared out of Stranahan Park. It was kind of described as a problem, as an issue, but I didn't hear a whole lot of solutions. I'm curious, what exactly, how large of an issue do you consider homelessness to be in Fort Lauderdale, and what exactly are your plans to deal with the issue?
Good question, Dan. If I may, I'm going to start with Chris Williams. I think Chris was the candidate who addressed this issue directly as a priority. So,
Yeah, thank you. So that in District 1 here, with my involvement with Coleridge Association and other things in District 1 and all the pre-agenda meetings with Heather Moritas, the neighbors have become accustomed to reaching out to us and getting help with issues. And the number one issue that I hear time and time again, especially in the last 3 to 4 months, is the growth of the panhandling community. And that's along the Federal Highway corridor, really starting down by Sunrise all the way up through basically past 62nd Street. So now we're seeing encampments along the way, and it's just, it's not only my vision, but that is the biggest thing that people reach out to me on and complain about. So as far as how we're going to solve that, I don't know if we're able to solve it, but we've got to do something to quell the growth of it. And currently the city has, we've gone different routes, and we've funded the United Way a few years ago with their homeless issue, the homeless outreach. And now we're taking that money and we're putting some money into Salvation Army. We've got a homeless outreach unit with the police department. We spend just about $500,000 this year. We're budgeted to spend about $440,000 next year. I think we can do a lot more. I think that we should do a lot more. We need to put money into it that we control through the city, and beef up that patrol unit and become better at, getting the people help, getting them to the right facilities. We see a lot of the same people in District 1 along that corridor, and whatever we're doing, it's like a drop of water in the pool. I mean, we've got to spend more money and do a better job of getting these people help.
okay. How about you, Ken Keechl? The same question, sir.
Sure. So I agree with Chris, everything he said, and he's been making that very clear on the campaign trail. That's one of his main issues, and I applaud him for it. Homelessness and housing opportunities is one of the top priorities of this commission. And I agree. It seems like since John, Christina, Chris, and I got in this race, the homeless situation has gotten even worse. We're going to have to spend more general fund money for the bridge assistance program and the police department and all of those things. But I think this problem is going to get worse before it gets better. And we're going to have to spend more money on the problem.
John Herbst?
So it's interesting. Obviously, we're all recognized when we talk to the neighbors that homelessness is the problem, and everybody has touched on that. But what they haven't told you is specifics. So let me explain to you one of the problems that we have. So we've just put in place a new ordinance that allows our police officers to go out there and address those individuals that are on medians and walking in and around traffic, which is great. What you don't know, and what they don't know because they don't have the experience that I have, is that when our officers get there, they then have to deal with the possessions that the individual has with them. They have to take control of those possessions and make sure that they're inventory and stored, which means that our road patrol officers are taken off the road for 3 to 4 hours every time they attempt to interact with one of those individuals. So my program involves hiring public service aides, not sworn police officers, and have the public service aide go out there, take possession of that shopping cart, that tent, those possessions, inventory them, and so we can get that officer back on the road. Again, this is what experience means, is that I know how to do it. I'm not just going to tell you what I'd like to do. I'm going to tell you how I'm going to do it. And that's the difference between myself and people that, no disrespect to my opponents here, but they haven't worked day in and day out for 16 years up to their waist in these issues where I have.
And how about you, Christina?
I think it's more than just road patrols, and I've worked in affordable housing and working with the homeless for about a decade now. And if people don't have a home, the best thing to do to get them not to be panhandling is to get them a home. We need to be working with community partners, and that includes working with the Broward Continuum of Care, which I know someone sits on the board and things like that, but the city needs to be coughing up more money. And we need to be dedicating more money towards affordable housing, specifically rent subsidies for people who are on disability, who get basically $750 or $800 a month, which they can't afford. They can't afford any type of rent. So those people, they need to be able to have safe, affordable housing. That includes also wraparound case management services for their behavioral health needs. There's several organizations in Fort Lauderdale and in Broward County that do this. And part of it is working with the landlords and actual community outreach towards them and getting the landlords and the real estate community behind this idea. I know that rent is prime right now. But people really need to think about the consequences of forcing people out of their homes rent-wise. When I sat on the Community Services Board, people are saying that people who are getting housing vouchers, their landlords aren't renewing those leases, and that's causing more homelessness, unfortunately.
I've got a quick follow-up question for you, Christina. Would you have voted for that ordinance that was described by some of your opponents, which is the ordinance that allows police to intervene at intersections, at medians?
Probably not. I think that the police need to be working on going on calls that are important. And I'm not saying that providing assistance to homeless people is not valuable time spent, but the police need to be out policing, not doing community outreach.
Okay. Let me switch to the subject of development. No community in Broward County is dealing with the sort of development issues and the intensity of development issues that are taking place in Fort Lauderdale. And you're all very familiar with all of them. The Galleria, Bahia Mar, Searstown, the property there just west of Andrews. But I want to talk about the one-stop shop project that we've editorialized about and written extensively about. And here again, there's a distinction worth pointing out to our readers and to voters from your questionnaires. Three of you, John Herbst, Christina, and Chris Williams, said to us they would have voted against the project, but Ken Keechl, you are a proponent. You're a proponent of the one-stop shop project. You're the only candidate in this race who supports it. It's been highly controversial, so tell us why you're right and they're wrong.
Look, this is reasonable. People can disagree on one-stop shop. I get it, but we're getting green space, and it's costing us nothing, not one penny. The money that we want to put towards the homeless has to come from somewhere, and we're not spending one penny of tax money to get this open space. It actually generates an annual revenue stream for us as well. I just think that I would have voted for it.
Okay. John Herbst, what's your opinion? Can't hear you. Can't hear you, John.
So this was a flawed project from day one. We're getting 25 cents on a dollar in terms of the value that property for the next 100 years. So Ken talks about we're getting open space for free. Let me tell you what we could have had for free if the commission had actually listened to the recommendations that I made to them. We could have had a city hall for free. Our joint city-county government campus, which was a pipe dream to begin with, has fallen apart, and we now need to build a new city hall, and we're getting presentations from our real estate consultant saying it's going to cost us $30, $40, $50 million to locate land in the downtown to build a new city hall. Well, guess what? We had 3 1/3 acres right across the street from our existing property, which means we could have built the building, we could have continued operations uninterrupted in our current building, and then moved across into our brand new building. And I proposed doing it through a public-private partnership where we would have had a private developer come in, build 10 floors of parking, 10 floors of city hall, and then they could have done 20 floors of either residential or commercial. In exchange for us bringing the land to the deal, the private developer would have constructed that building for us for free, and there were developers lined up waiting for that opportunity. So yes, the green space is nice, but we need a new city hall. You want to save $400 million, which is what it's going to cost us to build a city hall? That was the opportunity, and we missed it.
Okay, John, a quick follow-up for you, John Herbst.
Yeah.
Ken Keechl has talked about the amenities and, getting park space for free in the very heart of downtown. Might there be another reason, in your opinion, why Ken Keechl supported One Stop Shop other than the amenities?
Absolutely. So, there's a theme that's running here. The lobbyist who represents One Stop is the lobbyist who represents Galleria is the same lobbyist who's funding Ken's campaign. Now, I'm sorry, Stephanie Toothaker has her thumb on the scale of every one of these projects. And it's about time that we broke that connection. She's bragged around town about how she runs City Hall, and Ken has bought and paid for it. And I think we need to recognize the influence of lobbyists who push bad projects on our neighborhoods and the way that they are having an impact on how things get done. It's the elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about, but I'm happy to bring it up because Ken says we need to talk about elephants in the room. So there's the biggest one.
If you believe, if I may respond briefly, Steve,
of course.
If you believe I'm bought by Stephanie Toothaker or Robert Lockery or Millage or Courtney Crush or anybody else, by the way, isn't Jason Crush Courtney's husband and you have beers with him all the time? If you think I'm bought by any of those people, you don't know me. Okay, people want to see somebody on the commission who's not doing it for revenge, whether it's me or Chris. They want someone who's there for the right reason, not someone who just moved in to the district and has hidden his address.
I lived in the district for years. Okay, I lived in the
listen. So I resent.
One at a time.
Ms. Toothaker has a lot of power. So does Ms. Crush, your friend. So does Lockery. All of them. That's how it works. When people, half the time, I don't even see the money. It goes to my campaign manager, treasurer. So that's just slanderous to her, but I can take it.
Okay, Ken, I want to close the loop on something here. And again, there's been a multitude of rumors in this race. This is an intense race, big city, serious politics. But you're an attorney, and I want to ask you about a recurring rumor that's out there in the political bloodstream of Fort Lauderdale that you were some sort of a paid advisor or paid consultant to the proponents of the One Stop project.
I never lobbied for them. They wanted to hire me, and the commission accepted the project before I ever got involved. I never talked to any of them.
You met with Alan Boileau.
No, I didn't.
It's on record.
No, I didn't.
You did. Alan Boileau, the city attorney on that project. It is on record.
John, that's a lie. There was a telephone call one time with one of the men. I don't even know their names. Okay.
Alan Boileau, city.
I don't even know that name.
You don't know who the city attorney is, and you're running for city commission?
I thought you were saying something else. Yeah, I know who he is, but not on that project. I swear. Not at all.
That's. I have it on record.
Well, you know what? Why don't you show me that? Like I showed you the letter that you denied yesterday, because
by the way,
because that's news to me. That's news to me, Mr. Herbst. You might be getting One Stop Shop confused with 808, where I did lobby the commission and planning and zoning, and it was a great win for the city, and the mayor voted against it. So maybe you're thinking of that project. I also represented waste management once years ago.
Okay. let's move on, and I want to be ecumenical with all four of the candidates. It's a lot to balance here, but I appreciate the feedback. Chris Williams,
Yes,
I'm
sir.
going to ask you straight out, and you've been in the real estate business for a long time in Fort Lauderdale,
Yes, sir.
mainly in Coral Ridge, right?
Well, we sell all over. Wherever everybody wants something to buy, we'll go help them.
Okay. In your
But
opinion,
yes, a lot in Coral Ridge. You're correct.
yeah. In Europe, I'd like to ask you. We at the editorial board of this newspaper think that development and development-related issues are central to the identity and the sustenance of this community. So I want to ask you about, who's the most pro-development candidate in this race, and what role should voters place on development? And when I use the word development, I'm talking about traffic congestion, noise, the whole thing.
Who's the most pro-development candidate? Steve, I know it's not me. I can tell you that. And based on our previous forums together, I don't know that no one's really risen to the top as being the pro-development candidate. So I don't know if I can answer that question. I don't want to just take a shot at somebody just for the sake of doing it. So,
okay, fair enough. What is your position on the proposed redevelopment of the Galleria?
So I've been involved with the Galleria project going back to when they first came to the table about 5 years ago when Courtney Crush was the attorney, and of course that thing died at City Hall before they could present it. And then we got cranked up again back in October when Stephanie Toothaker came to the Coral Ridge board, and we put our little committee together like we did 5 years ago. And we've been very, very involved in sitting down with her and the other affected communities like Sunrise Intercoastal and the Corinthian. And, in general, we know we need to do something at the Gallery. It's a huge community asset that should be polished up and cleaned up and fixed and regenerated. However, what we're all having heartburn with is the amount of units they want to put in there. It's 1,900 plus a little bit more. And the fact that they want to grab all the flex units, most of the flex units that are left, which is a no-go for anybody. No one is agreeing with that. So we're a little bit at a standstill here. And you all mentioned Stephanie Toothaker earlier. So she's kind of gone quiet on us, what she's done. I've never dealt with her until this project. So where we are now is the last development agreement we got was at the beginning of June. And they did put in there the 1,900 units and flex and all that, which everyone threw up on. And supposedly they're rewriting the development agreement, which we've not seen yet. So I don't know if I answered your question very clearly, but I can tell you we want something there terrific, but we do not want to overburden that area with development because we've got another corner parcel at Bayview and Sunrise. It's potentially going to be developed. That's where the 7-Eleven is. We've got to do things to where it doesn't affect the neighborhoods.
Do you agree? You brought up Stephanie Toothaker's name here as well. Do you agree with John Herbst that the land use lawyer and lobbyist Stephanie Toothaker has too much influence over this commission?
Well, Steve, that's what I've been hearing. So in my personal account with her, I can't say that, but I do see her name on a lot of these bigger, controversial, needing variance type things, and one of the big things now, and if she is trying to push this PDD change to 500 feet, because of the project down by Pier 66, I would probably have to say I'm very concerned about her influence in City Hall. No question.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt, but do us and do everyone a favor. Tell us by making a PDD change to 500 feet, kind of translate that for the community and tell us.
Sure. So the planned development district, the current allowable height in those areas is 300 feet. So. And that's what we're dealing with now, like around the gallery. If the gallery ends up being a PDD, the height on some of the property could be 300. They're trying to keep the heights to 150. But with the Tavistock development down by Pier 66, they're trying to go to 500 feet, which is outside the RAC, the Regional Activity Center, which downtown we've got several buildings around the 500-foot mark. So over at Pier 66, they want to go above the 300 limit right now. And there's certain criteria that they have to follow with certain amount of acreages and units per acre. So we're getting, the city planners have asked us for feedback on raising the allowable height from 300 to 500 feet, which means that anywhere in the city in the PDD, they're not going to have to ask for any exceptions to go above 300 feet. And that right there is a certain recipe for overdevelopment instantly. I mean, we're already down that path right now, but now we're going to be outside the regional activity center where there's a lot of height, and we want to put it into different parts of the city. So all the HOAs I've talked to, we're all issuing non-support letters for that feedback back to the planner.
Okay, let me ask Ken Keechl. Ken, what is your position on the idea of allowing an allowable maximum height of 500 feet in some of these projects?
I think all of us have taken the position publicly that that's not appropriate. I think we've also taken the position publicly that the flex units should not be gobbled up by Galleria, and that one of us should be on the dais when the plan is being voted on. So we've all expressed concerns about this being fast-tracked, and I agree with Chris, it has slowed down.
Ken, a follow-up question on a totally different subject. Christina Disbrow mentioned earlier in this conversation the rudeness, lack of decorum, really improper behavior by members of she didn't mention the mayor by name, but the mayor runs the city commission meetings. We all know that. Do you share her concern? Has Fort Lauderdale sort of lost its way here in terms of dealing with the public?
Steve, that's a great question. So by definition, there's going to be conflict in politics. Okay. There's too much at stake. You're not allowed to talk to each other about issues. So you have to get on the dais because of Sunshine Law and address them. I've seen them all get along well, even when they're screaming at each other. There was a major issue between Glassman and Moritas, and they ended up hugging it out, so, but it seems like since we all got involved in this race, it's gotten a little bit worse. We've seen them calling one racist and one calling one something else. I don't believe in that. And that's why I said earlier that, John Herbst is going around trashing the mayor and Glassman, and then he wants to go serve with them. I'm a consensus builder. I know all of them. I know almost everybody who's running. And when I got on the Broward County Commission, they never could get the runway expanded because they never could get to 6. And I was able to form a consensus. So I do believe they need to tone it down a little bit. But I don't think it's worse than anything else that I've seen.
Okay, I'm going to give John Herbst a chance to respond. So get your phone ready there, Mr. Herbst. But Ken,
yeah.
I want to ask you directly if either Dean Trantalis or Glassman are making calls on your behalf, helping you to raise money, encouraging people to vote for you.
Mayor Trantalis is doing none of those things. Both John and I have been given money, as I understand it, at the request of Mr. Glassman, and that's okay. If Mr. Glassman, Commissioner Glassman thinks I'm better for this seat than Mr. Herbst, he has the right to say that. But I've not asked them to make phone calls. I have not asked for their endorsement. I don't want their endorsements. I'm running my own race. As I said, in my my questionnaire, I've been endorsed, but I'm not relying on those. I'm relying on my record.
Okay, John Herbst, please respond, John, especially the assertion by Ken Keechl that you've been running around the city trashing the mayor and trashing Commissioner Glassman.
So frankly, that's absurd. I am not running for revenge. I know Ken is trying to run that narrative because he can't match my experience. But I've been talking about running for city commission for years. You can go back and talk with Romney Rogers, whom I sat next to on the dais for quite a long period of time. He knows very well I've been exploring this. The only thing is, I always said I would never run against any of the commissioners I served under. That's just my own ethical perspective on that. When Heather Moritas decided to step down early in her tenure, it gave me the opportunity to do something that I have planned on and wanted to do for many, many, many years. Had she not stepped down, I would have very happily ridden off into the sunset and pursued other things in my life. It is ridiculous to assert that I'm going to spend the time, money, and effort running for office so that I can effect some sort of revenge. How could I get revenge on the mayor and Glassman? This is not like when Bruce Roberts ran and wanted to fire the city manager. I can't fire the mayor. I can't fire Glassman. There's no revenge to be had. it's an absurd statement on his part. So it's the furthest thing from the truth. I'm running because I have devoted the last 23 years of my life to public service. I think I have a unique skill set, and I want to continue to bring that for the benefit of our residents.
All right, thank you. I'm just going to pause and take a deep breath here and just see if Dan Sweeney or Susanna Bryan has any questions.
Ken, earlier you said that when you were saying that John Herbst is running out of revenge, you said voters should not vote for people who are running out of revenge, whether that's me or Chris Williams. You did not mention Christina. Are you saying that Christina is running out of some sort of revenge plot, why did you not mention her as a viable alternative to John Herbst?
Look, I don't know much about Christina. I hear she's a wonderful person. When I ran for the House, she endorsed me. But I know Chris very well. We've done a lot of talking. And Chris is being a gentleman, trying not to get in the middle of all this. But he has expressed to me that he shares my concerns about the things I've discussed today. So I think Christina's heart is in the right place. I think Chris's heart is in the right place. You know, if the people elect Christina or Chris over me, good for them.
Okay, Christina, what makes you, you know, I think Chris said something earlier about having more experience as far as dealing with the commission as well. What makes you a better candidate than people who, like Ken, like Chris, like John, have all these years of experience on the city commission? What makes you stand out?
Well, I sat on the community services board for 4 years, including sitting as the chair and vice chair, which actually oversees the community development block grant funding for nonprofits, as opposed to housing opportunities for people with AIDS through Ryan White. I've sat and actually worked in the hands-on in the community with nonprofits, either as a legislative aide, either working directly with nonprofits or as a consultant now. And Fort Lauderdale needs diversity. Currently, we have one woman, she's leaving. We have one person with school-aged kids, that's Ben, he's leaving. I'm the only one of those two. I'm the only one that hits those things. And not to be rude, but we really need diversity. And the way the commission is right now, it's pale, stale, and male. So
Interesting.
for anyone to say that I don't have experience working in the community or with the commission hasn't read my resume.
Okay. I want to switch to Ken Keechl for a moment. Ken, am I correct? If I got my math, my history right, the last 3 times you've run for elective office, you were unsuccessful.
As Rosemary said when she endorsed me for my 3rd unsuccessful attempt, when the Sentinel endorsed me for the House against, ironically, Heather's husband, the voters have not been kind to me. I thought that was one of the best lines that your editorial board wrote when you gave me the endorsement against George. So yes, Steve, if you'd been around when I was in office, you would have heard me say, there's nothing wrong with losing. You know, if John loses or Christine loses and they really want to do this, they should try again. You know, if you're afraid of losing, you never can win. I didn't intend to run again. I really thought I was done. I got a great practice, but Heather surprised everybody, you know, by dropping out 2 years early. And I thought, you know what, I can finish that term. And so, but yes, I have lost before and I've won before.
Okay. All right. One of the stories that's captured the public's attention and ours is this ridiculous use of taxpayer money for the Summer Jams concert at Mills Pond Park, which is escalated nearly $500,000. We know that it's still being investigated and looked into by the new city manager and the city auditor. But let me begin with John Herbst. And John, be as specific as you can. What happened here? We know the broad outline of what happened. Our interest is, how do you fix it? How do you make sure something like this never happens again?
So years ago, we loosened the requirements that we had for the city manager's purchasing authority. It was $25,000. We increased that. And as part of that, I was able to get the commission to agree that city manager had to report all the purchases that he approved under his own authority. That authority was later increased to $100,000, and at the time that was done, that requirement for a monthly report was dropped. It was no longer part of the procurement code that the commission approved. They apparently didn't want to see the details. I think that was a huge mistake. That was a failure of our internal controls, which would have highlighted and identified the spending immediately. So we have a process problem. And the process problem is that we lack transparency in the spending that's under the authority of the city commissioner. I advised them of that. They ignored my advice and moved forward and loosened the oversight and transparency requirements that I had built into it.
We all realize you're not at City Hall and don't have direct access to these city records without a public records request. But can you document for us? Could you document that you warned them that this was a bad idea and they didn't take your advice?
If we went back 10 years ago, we could probably find those emails, but I doubt they still exist. But a lot of what I do is not necessarily in the form of an email. I counsel the city manager, I counsel the city commission, and I do that typically behind closed doors. Like an attorney, I advise my client. I don't do this up on the dais. That's not an effective way to accomplish change and to move the needle. So as a trusted advisor, I need to be able to do that in a way that my clients, if you will, the commission or the manager, have confidence that this is going to remain a confidential conversation between myself and them. Obviously, I've got to go around to them individually. We can't, violate sunshine laws. I can't tell one commissioner what the other commissioner said. What I do is I make recommendations about what I think is best practices, best policy, and then I hope that finds its way into ordinances when they adopt them. But I don't call out, to Ken's point, I don't embarrass my commissioners on the dais. I don't call them out when they do things that I think are not in the best interest of the city. That's not the right forum to do that. The forum is behind closed doors, one-on-one, in person.
Okay. I'm going to switch to Chris Williams, but stay on this topic. Chris Williams, again, as specific as you can, what's the takeaway? What's the remedy for what happened with this thing with Commissioner McKenzie and this concert?
So whenever you have a breakdown and something like that with a process, going back to ran a manufacturing company for many years, and we had operating procedures in place. And whenever there was a breakdown in the procedure, we do a root cause and corrective action. So if I'm getting involved in this right now, I want to understand from the auditor what exactly happened, what's the timeline, and did someone violate a procedure? Is there no procedure in place? Is there a loophole? We've got to understand where we're at and then go back and do a corrective action and fix the issue.
Christina, what is your thoughts about this situation?
I think Chris just put that really nicely. It's going backwards, seeing what happened and taking corrective steps. How I agree with that, but I would like to think that this is a one-time thing, since Chris Lagerbloom was in his last few days of being on the job and just said pretty much like, screw it, go along with, just do what you have to do to make this happen. I think he really deserves the brunt of the blame for allowing that to occur. When in reality, he should have listened to the Parks and Rec director, and he should have had a conversation with Commissioner McKenzie and his aide.
Okay. This is now in the hands of Greg Chavarria, who was appointed city manager without a search after Chris Lagerbloom announced he was going back to his native Alpharetta, Georgia, near Atlanta. And I want to ask a kind of a 30-second question. I know we're running short on time, and I'm going to include everybody. I want a yes or no question and an explanation. I'll start with you, Christina. We'll go alphabetically. You said on your questionnaire you would not have voted to make Greg Chavarria the permanent city manager. Why not? Tell us why.
Fort Lauderdale has roughly a $500 million budget, and we deserve to have the best. And that includes putting out a national search for a qualified city manager. Not to say that he is not to say that he doesn't know the issues, but let's ensure that he is the best and most capable candidate.
Okay, John Herbst.
So exactly the same thing. I've worked with Greg. I have a tremendous amount of respect for him. He's incredibly intelligent. He's a humble servant leader, and I look forward to working with him in the future. But the process was flawed. There is an appropriate method for hiring a city manager. It involves a nationwide search. We are the largest city in Broward County, and we deserve to know that we have scoured the nation looking for the most qualified individual. And I hope it's Greg who rises to the top of that. And I desperately, want to work with him in his new role. But I think the process was flawed.
Ken Keechl.
I answered that I would have given him the opportunity. Again, if he's implicated in all these things that we're hearing about, the CRA money being utilized, and all these other things that were wrong, then I may change my mind. But I went through this. I'm the only one on the dais who's gone through this. And so when I decided, along with the majority of my colleagues, to terminate Pembroke Cassio because she was not doing what the commission was telling her to do. And we went out and we spent a lot of money that could be used for homelessness and millions, I think. And in the end, it turned out to be Ms. Henry, who's inside, who knows everything, who's been working there, and one woman from Miami, who's like her competitor between Broward and Miami-Dade. And so if you've got somebody that the commission believes is doing a good job, like John just said, then it makes sense to save the money. They know where everything is. They know all the projects. And so I would give him a chance. But remember, city attorney, city auditor, city manager, they can all be terminated.
Okay. Chris Williams.
Given the current circumstances with the commission, with 3 new commissioners coming in November, and Greg's knowledge of what's going on within the city, and every meeting I've been in with him with budget advisory, he's done a really tremendous job in understanding the issues and reacting to questions without having to go get information. So I've been very impressed with him. So if I was on the commission and we had 3 people leaving, I certainly don't think we would have attracted a good pool of candidates that are looking at, well, do I want to go to the city and then I end up with 3 new bosses? They may not like me. It could create a lot of problems. So I think that given Greg's stature, it was the right thing to do in this year and elevate him.
All right. Thank you very much.
Hey, Steve, I forgot to ask Ken Keechl about his response to your Summer Jams concert question.
Oh, okay.
Could you respond to the Summer Jams debacle, please?
It's a debacle.
That was my, excuse me, Ken, that was my oversight. So please go ahead. Yes. Yep.
I thought you did ask me. I'm sorry. What's the question, Steve or Susanna?
I think the question Susanna wants amplification from you on, Ken Keechl, is what would be your solution to the problems that led to the overspending at Mills Pond Park?
Well, look, we're still dealing with this, right? And quite honestly, good for Commissioner Glassman for looking into this. I agree with what John said. John, we agree on something. We need more oversight. I think it's still being played out. I mean, we know that the CRA money was being utilized wrongly for events after the law changed. And so there needs to be more oversight. Absolutely.
Okay. I'm going to switch to Christina Disbrow for a minute. Disbrow. I'm sorry, Christina. We've only got a couple of minutes left. Just a quick preamble. I go back to the day when one of my first jobs as a reporter in Broward County was to cover the city of Fort Lauderdale. And this is back in the days of Jim Naugle, Rob Dressler, Virginia Young, names that are now memorialized on school buildings. I knew these folks. I covered them. I've got a long history with the city. And what I'm bringing that up for is the mayors of past years. The mayors didn't need a high-priced chief of staff on the scene. And so the question is a direct one to you, Christina. Does Scott Wyman have too much influence over the day-to-day government in Fort Lauderdale?
I think that aides play a valuable role in helping their elected their boss basically be able to get the job done. Elected officials are unfortunate. I don't want to say unfortunately. I love sunshine, but at a municipal level, it's not the same as like at the legislature. they can talk freely amongst themselves before they vote and hash things out. It's a lot harder at City Hall. I don't want to say that. Really, I can't say whether he does or not.
Okay.
Having more information.
Ken, what do you think?
Well, this is the first time I'm hearing that. I mean, this is a very interesting meeting we're having. It's one thing for us to attack each other and question each other because we're the public officials who are going to sit on the dais. But now we're going after Mr. Toothaker and we're going after Scott Wyman. I have no indication that he has too much power. Now, we all know that Fort Lauderdale is a weak mayor. It's not like Plantation. But you need to have talented people. You know what? He was one of the best reporters that Sentinel ever had when I was on the Broward County Commission. I would read his articles the next day to see what I missed. I'm sure he's bringing that skill set to Dean Trentalis, but no one has ever suggested to me until this question that he has too much power.
Okay, I was really raising it as a question, I thought, but I appreciate and respect your viewpoint. What about you, Chris Williams?
You know, I think anybody in that position as chief of staff would probably, there'd be people that would say that they have a lot of influence. And I'm sure that they probably do because they're there full time. You know, I guess the commissioners and the mayor technically are doing other things than running around City Hall every day. So when you're managing the mayor's schedule and contacts and whatnot, I could see where people may feel that way. I personally never had any experience with feeling that Mr. Wyman was running City Hall per se. I've never seen him vote on the dais or anything like that on policy. So, you know, it could be a personal issue with somebody, but I'm not specifically aware of that. Okay,
very good. And I'm going to let John Herbst address the same question briefly, John.
Sure, thank you. So for many, many years, I know a lot of the folks you talk about, Rob Dressler, Jim Naugle, Jack Seiler. So through all those years, the mayor and commissioners have had an assistant. In fact, going back to the days of John Aurelius, there were only 3 commission assistants for the entire commission. So we managed just fine without having chief of staffs. That implies a level of power and authority that I think is inappropriate for a commission assistant. The commissioners make policy, and to imply that a chief of staff is somehow the gatekeeper and authoritative voice on behalf of an elected official, I think is inappropriate.
Okay. I'm going to pause there. Folks, I wish we had another hour, but we have 2 other commission races and many candidates to follow. Thank you all for participating this morning. I really appreciate it very much. The best of luck to all 4 of you. Thanks.
Thank you, Steve and Dan. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Steve. Dan, appreciate it. Have a great day.